question. Welcome to our Fringe event focusing on tech skills and the tech skills gap. We're still expecting Ali McGovern to join us. Last time I spoke to her, she promised me she was coming, but it is the prerogative of ministers and MPs to arrive late to Fringe events, as I'm sure you're familiar with. The fire exit is where the green sign is, and we will be, there'll be a video, so when it comes to questions, just remember that you'll be recorded and on YouTube for everyone to discover in future. You're very welcome to today's debate. We have a great panel, and we're looking forward to getting into this topic of how do we meet this, this challenge around tech skills. Let me introduce our speakers today. So starting on my right, we have Michaela, who is at Google, where I used to work. We used to work together. And Michaela has previously worked for the Labour Party, was an advisor to Jonathan Ashworth, among others, and has been Google's lead on digital skills, which has been a really, maybe I'm biased, but I think Google has done, of all the tech companies, quite an impressive job on tech skills, and I think there is a lot to learn from what Google's been doing. Also on my right is Rickhuss, who's the General Secretary of Community. Community is has a very wide range of members, including a growing set of tech sector members. Also, we were just chatting about interesting rise in the number of self-employed trade unions, which is not, I think, what you usually associate with the idea of trade union members. A really interesting development. And I know Roy is going to talk a bit more about some of the partnership work that's happening with Google as well, which I think is really interesting about how do we retrain people for AI. And on my left is Yasmeen Sebbana, who's recently promoted to director, not just associate director. So congratulations to Yasmeen. And she's focusing on public sector in her work at Public First, and is also a former advisor to Labour and worked with Keir Starmer in his private office. So we have an excellent panel with a lot of in-depth knowledge on the issue of AI and digital skills and how we can meet this challenge. And maybe I'll start with you, Michaela, just to sort of introduce sort of how you see this from Google's perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Theo, and thanks everyone for coming to the Fringe event today. It's such a lovely panel when you kind of go through and think, oh yeah, let's have that nice person, they're clever, and really lovely to work with. So this is a really nice space to be in. As Theo said, I lead digital skills policy at Google, and I just wanted to set the scene with kind of why we think digital skills is so important. So for us, our mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And we see ourselves as, if we are part of driving an increasingly digital economy, digital skills are a key part of people being able to make the most of that. And if people don't have those skills, then we're failing in our mission. So in 2015, actually, Theo might have been part of that, Google launched the Google Digital Garage, which is free digital skills training for adults. That goes around the country. We've had many a partnership from the DWP to Enterprise Nation, the FSB, Community we've worked with a few times over the years, but we've got something quite exciting kind of at the moment in particular. And that works and runs, and we have fantastic. We've done hubs and buses and pop-up events, and and it is not necessarily a sense for that one of build it and they will come. You really do have to work in partnership with people, with a trusted space, or it might be the local Chamber of Commerce or whoever there is active to get people to say, you know what, this is good. And the reason why we try and do it across the country is that there is so much available online, but often people just want someone to chat to and signpost and then actually maybe continue their journey online. But we've definitely seen that kind of user journey. It's been so much more positive when it's kind of started in person, or you've been able to kind of deal with a bit of a snagging issue just from that chat. And we've trained 1 million people through that programme, and there are a number of different ways in which we do digital skills through our apprenticeship programs, through ones that are like specifically based on our products, because Google Digital Garage is platform agnostic. And then last year we were seeing, well, 2 years ago we had I think the whole AI is the new thing and everyone now needs to do AI. And a colleague and I have been talking about the Google Digital Garage and our offering, and saw, just actually, there were, if you talk about digital skills, and often people say, oh, I'd really love you to do this project with older people specifically who are using the internet for the first time, or I really want you to do this thing that's over here that's very specific. And we did a map of what was available from other skills programs and where people were in that space, and found that the kind of match between what we were able to offer and what was in the market was elsewhere for free or paid by, by other provision, was that actually those more advanced digital skills, and where people, and where this new AI-powered or enabled tech was coming through. So we invested in a new program there, and that was really, really popular, of 10 new courses, and that includes things like how to boost your productivity with AI, or problem solve like a consultant, and we've been taking that across the country. And last year we did our economic impact report, which found that, we did it with Public First, and one of the findings for that was that 700,000 hours of admin tasks could be saved for GPs and teachers by 2030 using AI-powered tech. And love a report, I'm sure we all do. The challenge then was, okay, that's a hypothesis. How do we save those admin hours? What do we need to do with that cohort of GPs, or what do we need to do with those teachers? And that's where the project that we're doing in partnership with Public First and with Community came across, which is putting that theory into the practice. So we're working with, it's called AI Works, and it's a test into how can you practically apply those, hypothetical savings by using AI tech. That's with trade union members through Community, with a couple of multi-academy trusts with teachers and support staff. And then we're also working with Enterprise Nation with small businesses. And one of the things before I do hand over, I think Roy might be next, is that right? Yeah. Is one of the things that we found from when we were starting the project with this, the kernel of an idea. And the best was Kate Dearden, who we were working with at Community, who's now the Labour MP, said, what our members are telling us is that they think that AI is something being done to them. And we said, okay, well, we think it's a tool that can work for them, so let's see how we can make that, so we can have a worker-led AI adoption. So that's one of the project we're very excited about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Good to have you.
No, thank you, Chair. Pleasure to be here and to be part of the discussion. We also worked closely with Public First. We did a piece of work that Yasmeen was really a driving force behind it, in which we've got a significant number of members in the justice sector, and we did a piece of work which was called Beyond Bars, which was actually, this was well before the election, before we knew when the election was going to be. And we were looking at rehabilitation and how we help people beyond, sort of coming back into society. And then interestingly, when Labour won the election, James Timpson was appointed on the basis of his work that he had done around rehabilitation. I think that's his strength. So we've already met with the Minister, with James. We presented the report. He was well received. He's gone away on holiday. He said he was going to take it with him and read it on the beach. I don't know whether he did. He was a bit, because he said, I hope I don't get sun cream all over it. No, it's probably a bit too much information, James. We'll be happy if you just read it and come back to it. But we have had, he's written to me, and he's really positive about the report, and he wants to continue that dialogue. So it just shows the partnership, working is really vital. And again, with Michaela, with Google, they came to our conference in Brighton this year. They did a fantastic exhibit at our conference. Our members were really enthused. So again, that can really be something we can take forward. I'm probably a little bit disappointed to start off by saying I think this is a space where trade unions are not doing enough, and I think we can do a lot more. If you kind of boil it down, the comments that Kate did and would have said at that time, I absolutely recognise it. In the workplace, people feel this is something that they have no input or no control over, and that's worrying, because then there's anxiety and people wonder how it's going to impact on their work life, and is it going to be a negative impact. We are pushing to have what we would call tech reps in every workplace, and actually our assistant operations director, Tiffany Guinness, who's also heads up our education, she's developed some really good training courses for our members that's trying to give them the confidence of how to use AI and tech as a negotiating opportunity. So when we meet with the employer, this is on the agenda. It's not just about other sort of pay terms and conditions. We're actually using this as a way of improving benefits for workers. I was saying earlier that I attended a conference a while back at one of our sister unions in Europe, and they had a whole session dedicated to AI and digital development, and they totally embraced it. They were really positive. They were like so upbeat and saying, this is going to be fantastic, we're all going to have better jobs, we're going to have better terms and conditions, we're going to have a better way of life. And then you come back home and everything's, oh my God, we're all going to be replaced with robots, we're all going to lose our job, and it's all terrible. And it's strange to see that. We have to be, I think, a lot more positive and embrace AI, and trade unions have to do that as well. We also, I think, I was quite proud to work with Future.Now. I don't know if you know Liz Williams. She's doing some amazing work. And when I first started getting involved with Future.Now, working at digital skills, and it just strikes you, this is not just about work. It's got, it is life. It's everywhere you go now, and everything you do is about having those digital skills. And there was a stark fact that Liz, in one of their surveys, 22 million people of working age do not have basic digital skills. And those people are totally in danger of being left behind and being disenfranchised from anything. By and large, they can book a doctor's appointment without doing it online. So it's not skills for work; it's skills for life, and it's all around us. So I think unions have to play more. We have to look at how we develop our membership training courses, partnerships, and give people the skills and take away some of the anxiety that they may be feeling and some of the concerns they may be feeling. So, looking forward to the rest of the debate.
Great. Yasmeen?
Fantastic. So, as we touched on before, I'm from Public First, and we've really enjoyed working with both community and Google on this project. And just give you a sort of bit of an overview, it's really been slightly touched on, but of what Public First do is we're a political consultancy, but what sort of sets us apart is we combine that political insight with public opinion research and economic modelling. And those are sort of the two core pieces of work that we've been doing as part of this project. And the economic modelling we did first of all, and that was to estimate the economic impact that generative AI would have on various UK sectors. And then we did the public opinion research. We did a nationally representative survey of workers to test their attitudes towards AI, and also looking at their views on learning in that space, and also around broader technology adoptions. Those were sort of the two core pieces of work that we did as part of this project. And just going into the economic modelling first, and our main findings from that, we were mainly looking at three main sectors, the way that we divided up all the different types of jobs in the UK. Firstly, we were looking at areas where jobs could be augmented by AI, so areas where you would see significant productivity increases through the use of AI with certain roles. Any jobs that might be insulated from the impact of AI, so saying that much of their core work would actually not be as affected by generative AI. And then finally, any jobs where AI might cause displacement, so where a high proportion of their core tasks could be impacted by generative AI. And we investigated those 3 areas, and what we found is that generative AI can have considerable economic value in increasing productivity across all of these different areas. In the insulated jobs, these were roles like window cleaners, fishmongers, hairdressers. These were areas where less than 25% of their tasks on a day-to-day basis would be impacted by AI. Then we looked at the displaced jobs. So these were areas like data entry or bookkeeping, and this is where there was a high likelihood that AI could displace part of their roles. But then this augmented section is a really interesting one, and we found that over 60% of jobs have the capacity to be augmentable by generative AI. And the way that we define this is by saying that that Gen AI could improve productivity in a big way without this risk of displacement. It's just interesting that we had 60% of roles being put into that space. And one thing that also came out of this was very interesting when we were looking into it, is that we found that this idea of automation is actually less about sector and more about specific role, because we found that there were, across individual occupations, almost every organisation we looked into had some sort of clerical work or admin work that could be automated by AI, and that AI could assist with in helping people in those roles. So even when we put these into separate categories, the nuance that was really interesting we found in it is that most of it was actually on a spectrum, and that different roles could be augmented by AI and could benefit from AI adoption, even those roles that were the insulated ones that we spoke about in the beginning. And the other finding that we found was this: the displacement group was actually a very small minority when we were looking at the wider sort of positive impact that generative AI could have on workplaces. So that was our economic modelling piece that we did first. Then we did this nationally representative survey. We surveyed over 3,000 workers on their views towards AI adoption and learning. And what was really interesting was around training. So we found that 1 in 5 workers had not been offered any sort of formal training in the past year. However, 95% of those who had been offered it accepted it. So we see a real dichotomy and difference between the desire for training and what workers want and wanting to upskill, and the fact that it hasn't been provided in many of these instances. It was interesting when we were talking to them about why they wanted this. Mainly it was to improve job performance and productivity, so you have this real drive of motivation for why people want to learn more. And what else was interesting is just first the workers that we spoke to had said that they picked up new skills in the past year, but a lot of them had learned that off their own bat and watched online videos and worked through that in order to train on that. So that was the sort of motivation for training part of it. We then did a section around optimism about AI and what people view about it and their perceptions of it. We found that 63% of workers are optimistic about AI's impact, and 82% of people who say they regularly use AI in their jobs were positive about it as well. So we see this interesting shift in people who use AI are much more positive about it, and there's a sort of lack of fear around what it can do once people are actually practically using it. We found that 38% of people have used Gen AI tools in the last year. And what's interesting about this is the specific sectors that Michaela mentioned earlier. Unionised workers and teachers, this was higher as well. So it's interesting that there's a high use amongst those groups. However, despite all these positive sides of it, many workers that we spoke to, both through our poll and also through the focus groups we ran, they just couldn't really see how AI was relevant to their roles. And this was sort of an educational piece that we found we had to do. And there's this idea around the lack of access to training and lack of understanding of what practically AI can do. That was definitely a barrier to people wanting to take up AI. But then we have this massive increase in demand for AI training. So we had 60% of workers said they were interested in AI training. And what was really key about this was people wanted to learn how to use it practically. So there was a real desire for people to say, well, I want AI to make me more productive, I want to learn more about it. But what we found is it was really, really key that people were saying, how does this impact my job, and how can I take this forward? And in the 3 groups that we mentioned, we spoke to teachers as separate focus groups, unionised workers. We found that teachers were really keen to use AI, but really stressed this need for space and training to be able to experiment safely with AI. And they all reported that its insufficient training was their main barrier to use, not this lack of trust or fear around what AI does. We found that unionised workers were very keen to use AI as a way of improving their performance, but there were concerns around displacement and how that would impact their roles as well. And then it was interesting when we looked at SMEs as well, because SMEs reported much higher need to rely on self-teaching and a lack of formal training as opposed to bigger businesses, whereas a lot of people in the larger businesses said that they had more structured opportunities. So to sort of pull this together, the economic modelling and also the public opinion research, while there is a group of people that we spoke to who feel that AI isn't relevant to their roles, they can't really see the benefit to them, and there's obviously an educational piece to do there, most of the people that we spoke to were really keen to learn and can see the potential that AI has to positively impact their roles. And the route that we found was key to this was really fostering that training and demonstrating to people the practical benefits. And this was crucial to helping to incorporate AI into people's work going forward.
Great, thanks Yasmeen. Welcome Alison McGovern.
Sorry for being late, everyone.
I'm not going to throw you straight in with I'll let you
go on,
catch your breath. But we've just been hearing about the sort of the research on AI and skills, and what we're hearing there is a demand from people to learn AI skills, and that when they get the opportunity, they jump at it. There's a question there about provision. But then we've also been hearing a really interesting case study of the work that Google and community are doing with people on the ground, an actual training program. And I think this combination is quite interesting. So before I come to Ali, I'm just going to ask you just a bit more about that. So I'm interested in just the sort of, who are the people that are doing these training courses? And is the goal of sort of the AI training course, so is it you're trying to give them a basic AI skills? Is it you're trying to retrain them from one job to another completely? Or is it actually every job there is this sort of set of AI skills?
I think it's probably all of the above. The main driver in some part was obviously the transition that some of our members and industries are going through, and we are seeing a need for retraining. So in particular, down in South Wales in Port Talbot and the Steelworks, we're facing a really challenging time in terms of job losses. Some of those people have gone straight from school almost into the steelworks, and probably thought that they had a job for life in the industry, and probably wouldn't have done any really formal training for some time. There's a great need there for that transitional type training. Our aim as a union is to be there for our members throughout this difficult period, and to try and give them the skills to get them back into work and back into workplaces. And Google then were fantastic in terms of the discussion that we had. So we are launching on, I think it's the 9th of October, we're opening a Hoba Centre in the main shopping centre in Port Talbot. It's a two-storey building. The one floor is going to be purely a training centre. Google have provided lots of good equipment for us, so we thank you very much for that. But have also developed a training programme, as I said, together with our education team, led by Tiffany Gillis. It's only literally, we wasn't sure we could announce it, but we can. It's literally, it's literally hot off the press, and as of yesterday, within days, we've had nearly 500 of our members have signed up for that training programme. Which, we're not a massive union, we're 43,000 members. 500 members signed up within days. There's a real appetite for that training, and there's a real interest and desire for it.
So, Michaela, the question I was going to ask you, I mean, so this is a great project, I mean, but I imagine doing one project is quite intensive. is it scalable? Do you think this is a model for what could be done? I mean, I know the other Google programs, you're talking about sort of millions of people using it as training. Is this a model that we can look at something that, and not just Google, but other tech companies could help?
Yeah, and as you know from your time at Google, Google loves a scalable solution. So here, you know, what we're looking at here are pilots. So the pilots with teachers and support staff in schools, with community trade union members, and then with small businesses. And you know, the purpose of that is, you know, I think, you know, we'll be training I think about 1,500 people through this specific AI Works project, which is slightly different from our partnership in Port Talbot. And so just so you know, the numbers are different because it's kind of two different work streams. But you know, when Roy was talking, is that I was thinking, you know, what is so crucial there is the partnership. So you know, for us, you know, we could go on a high street and open, you know, a two-story. We're not going to do this, right? But if we opened a two-story building training centre, you'd have people going, "What's the catch? What is this all about? What are you trying to sell me something?" You know, and and it's just, so that's why, you know, kind of partnership with trusted organisations where you are where people are, answering the questions that they're asking. You know, they're asking for that help. They're saying, you know what, I'm in this spot, and it is either falling out of the workforce or retraining, pivoting, and staying within the workforce. And their union is somewhere that they would go for that help, and we can do, you know, the training and have that provision there. But each of the pilots are different. So how we kind of recruited members was, again, trusting the partners that we have. So with community, so we'd like to run this project with you, pretty much up to you in terms of, you know, recruitment, like who do you want to do it, and we're going to do a mixture of in-person and online training. And then for the education trusts, we've got a mixture of in-person and online training, but it's just two multi-academy trusts with a fair few schools across the country. And then Enterprise Nation, again, it was them working with their members that were small businesses. So what we're really hoping, and that's why we're not just running a training program, we're doing it with Public First as a research project, is that what we hope to do, and you know, it's a very timely point with Skills England coming in, and you know, we know that skills is very much thought of by the Labour government as, you know, something that, you know, we can kind of get together and boost that economic growth through that as a vehicle, is that we would then be able to give those recommendations of saying, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, we piloted it here, and you know, we had a go, and actually here's some recommendations coming out of it.
So Ali, maybe I'll bring you in here. So we know as a country that we've got sort of jobs in the wrong places, and then we've got areas where we know there's going to be more vacancies in the future, but we know we haven't got the skill set to meet them. That feels like that's the sort of challenge that government is there to help solve. So how do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Theo, and it's such a fantastic. I'm sorry to have missed the conversation, but I'm so pleased to have come in and heard it being had, because that is exactly the point of the vacancies in Greater Manchester, for example. About 50% of them, we lack the skilled people to do those jobs, and that's Greater Manchester, right? So it's not even like the highly developed kind of like technology environment of London and the South East. So this is definitely, you know, top of my to-do list as Minister for Employment. Before I just say something about it, could I just thank SMF for everything, really. I think if you're coming to an SMF event for the first time, I might say, as somebody who's been quite involved with SMF, that having a think tank that is based on a cross-party basis about like how well our economy serves our values collectively as a nation has never been more important, and I think this conversation shows why. Because in the 14 years that I've been an elected politician, and for the past like 1,000 years, we've been wrestling with the conversation about whether the new technology is going to steal all of our jobs.
Yeah.
And like this time it might be different, maybe, but my gut would be probably not. Yeah. We were having this conversation, we were having the discussion about AI, and like maybe it's a massive risk. We were having it about robotics a few years ago. Before that, it was like Web 2.0, you know. So we go round these kind of hype circles about technology, and it almost always ends up creating more jobs. The challenge with technology is not whether it's good or bad, because if you can use your resources in a more efficient way, that is just good. The question is whether we can apply our values to it for the people that we in politics serve. And that's why you're right, Theo. This is why government inserts itself, so that we can make sure that technological change supports our public service objectives and supports all of our values, as I would think of myself as a progressive, supports those progressive values. So how do we do that? And I'm going to come to like trade unions and like education in a second, if I may, but before I do, if I could just like say one word about the work that I'm doing in government with colleagues, which is to try to totally revolutionise employment support, because it's really fascinating the way that you mentioned Port Talbot. I also am thinking about friends in Scunthorpe at the moment, who are people who are experiencing like big shifts in employment. And our public employment service, I mean, we don't even call it that. Nobody thinks about job centres in the UK as a public employment service. We think about it as the place where you go to sort out your universal credit and then get a lot of hassle. And as far as I'm concerned, like, if I can't bring that to an end and give us a proper public employment service, then Keir should sack me. Because we've got to do it, because people who are experiencing this big transition deserve a public employment service. But even if you're in a city like this, like Liverpool or Greater Manchester or Sheffield, where there's like a really good mix of opportunities, actually because we lack that public employment service, there isn't really a place where we can bring together lots of different bits of expertise to tackle the skills gap. You know, our colleges have been abandoned for far too long, and Skills England, as you rightly say, Michaela, is going to like be a big part of putting that right. But I want to see job centres a place where people can go and get real help. And so changing work coaching so that we allow DWP to do a lot more of its customer service operations digitally, so that we can let the people in DWP do what they do best, which is coach people to get access to skills, to think about what the college can offer them or other people can offer them, and to tackle things like childcare barriers and other things. That's the vision at the heart of the change that we want to bring about. Which brings me to our social partners, our trade unions. And I think we could spend a long time and create a big, pile of work thinking about all that was undone over the past 14 years, Union Learn, and the big role that trade unions played in that journey, transitioning from one set of skills to another, transitioning from one workplace to another. Unions have got to be at the heart of that. And I would like to see that in relation to technology in two ways. Firstly, training, which we've just heard about. I think there's no better advocates for people to have the skills that they need than trade unions. And if we're going to deal with the 12 million people who lack digital skills, I think, if I think about people in the social care workforce, for example, no one knows them better than trade unions. And the other thing is agreements. I think we need to think more, and union colleagues will, I'm sure, be thinking about this, how we build into like the agreements that we're making on fairer pay, like what that looks like in a world where we know that jobs are going to change through technology. If we can think ahead and build in like everybody getting a share of the benefits, then I think that's kind of like modern trade unionism that will serve our country well. So we need a plan that gets good and better jobs into places that need them, and we've mentioned several of those places. We need a plan where the government plays its role in providing a public employment service, and we need a plan where business and trade unions work together to plan that future, but I do not think it is beyond us.
Great, I'm going to ask for questions, so be thinking of them, but get ready. But we always want to bring
I
you
just want to respond on that to some of these things, absolutely. Just before you're right, we talked about the role of the unions exactly in terms of getting tech, AI, call it what you will, on the agenda with employers, that we should be having a part. I think Michaela mentioned Kate Dearden, who used to work for us, and said workers feel like this is something being done to them, and we've got to change that. perception. So we've developed some training programs for our reps so that they can go in and have the confidence to put this on the agenda and want to talk to employers about tech. And we're also trying to get a tech rep, that's the way to call it, in every branch and in every workplace. So it's absolutely right.
Yeah, I like the idea of a tech skills rep in every workplace. Yeah. Questions? Yeah, there's two here.
So hi, I'm Devon, I'm the Director of Policy and Practice. We do a lot of work with local authorities on identifying people who can benefit from different types of government support, including employment support. So I guess the point is, shift towards evolution, absolutely fantastic. I can see a lot more creativity, a lot more close to the ground type of activity. The point is, will government sort of really trust that local delivery by putting things that it has traditionally held very close to its chest in the hands of, say, local authorities or combined authorities? And I'm thinking specifically there of universal credit data, which is a longer conversation, but I won't kind of drill in on that point and keep it general, just letting go of control.
Yeah, question here.
Sean Williams, I'm the founder and chief executive at Gen AI. We make software that helps people write bids, tenders and proposals faster, more efficiently, and more effectively. Particularly keen on generative artificial intelligence, its ability to read and write. We've spoken a little bit about how you might train people to use technology. Of course, one of the great things about generative AI is you talk to it in natural language, so actually it's incredibly easy to use. And a lot of it is about access to the tech in a safe and secure way. So how do we get the technology into workers' hands? And then in the case of the public sector and places like Jobs Centre Plus and other kind of big public institutions, how do we get the technology into the hands of public sector workers such that they can play with the technology and find use cases for it?
Yeah. And one more question here.
Yeah, so Roy just mentioned a few minutes ago the sort of importance of partnership with the employers, and I think it kind of alludes a little bit to your question as well around that kind of shift of power into more sort of localised employers, and from a department perspective, how sort of quite devolved areas of IT structure and management like schools can really support their workforce in this kind of skills agenda. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts in particular about, and others, about how kind of a Labour government will support those local organisations in actually enabling and serving their employers in this kind of new age. Unsurprisingly, I'm from a tech provider, so a tech services provider, Accenture.
So there's three quite connected questions there, really, which are sort of about how does government trust and devolve to local authorities and devolution when delivering these services, but also the challenge without having a centralised approach. How do you get tech into people's hands, into employees' hands, and into the public sector? And then also, I think a similar question about that partnership and how do you reach people in schools. Those structures are not clear within when navigating the public sector for those on the outside. So I think interesting set of questions there. Anyone want to have a go at giving an answer?
The other, it's probably too technical for me and I want to understand, but the issue that you raise is interesting. As I mentioned, the surveys that were done by Future.now and the sort of 22 million people not having, a massive part of that was they don't have access to the hardware, and whether that's also the coverage across the network, etc. I think that the Conservatives had an industrial strategy council and a Greg Clark initiative, and they scrapped it. Boris boshed it because he realised they didn't have an industrial strategy. So there's not much point having a council to talk about it when you don't have one. Rachel mentioned in the speech yesterday, and I know Jonathan Reynolds has been talking about this for some time, about the industrial strategy, and I think that's absolutely critical and that's vital. It's something we need to make progress on. I was really pleased to hear Rachel say that within, I think it was a month, there was going to be some proposals or some progress in that area. This has to be part of that strategy. Skills, people, levelling up, call it what you will, that has to be at the heart of that industrial strategy. So it'll be interesting to see if that is an opportunity and a vehicle that can be used to push some of this forward. Putting skills at the heart of whatever government's industrial strategy that they come up with.
I think it was just, I know there's a couple of colleagues who also maybe work or bid for public sector contracts to be able to deploy technology and be able to kind of find those productivity gains within the public sector. I think that, that there are a few kind of big firms in that space. The idea is that hopefully that whichever firm it is that does that delivery, actually the public sector will benefit from AI-powered and AI-enabled tech there, and that's why, particularly for this project, it is something where we're trying to demonstrate proof of concept. Is that if you, particularly with teachers and support staff, which is the one that we've gone for as a public sector pilot, is that if you can work with those teachers and public sector support staff to say, look, here's the tech, and particularly on thinking about the trust element of it, if you understand it or know that it's not big and scary and over there, it's X, Y, Z instead, and it can help you do A, B, C, then you might think, oh well, I can use it. But what's interesting about the teachers, we did a survey before the teachers did the inset day and then afterwards. And what was really interesting from that was that at the beginning, low numbers of percentages said, I think that AI will affect my job. And you maybe have thought it might be the other way around. Anyway, after the training, they said, oh, I actually think my job might change quite a lot from AI, because they'd seen how it might be beneficial to them. And then a lot of how they thought AI might be helpful was all on kind of workload. And I was chatting to somebody from DFE and they said, this is all teacher retention. This is the stuff that makes people want to leave the workforce in teaching. And if you can, be able to deliver some of this, then actually we might be able to keep a few more teachers in the workforce, because some of the stuff they don't want to do is not why they went into teaching, can be dealt with by a machine, and they can spend more time in the classroom teaching students and pupils and getting that across. So there were just a few, I think, just wanted to we've just published an AI potential paper. If you go to the Google stand, you can get a copy there. So that's got much more the kind of policy points within the framework of looking at kind of responsible AI regulation and a few more pieces there. And then also just wanted to flag in terms of when Yasmeen was saying about some of those shorter form courses as well. I think what we're really hoping that with Skills England and with the change in the apprenticeship levy is that sometimes people don't need to go on an 18-month training course in order to be able to then do it. Sometimes they watch a video and then they do it immediately and then use it. And so actually, how can we make it that people can do smaller, shorter form courses that just help them keep moving and keep adapting to technological change?
I think also just pulling up from what Michaela said about the survey that we did and the focus groups we did as well, like so much of this work is just purely demystification of what Gen AI is. And I think quite a lot of people that we spoke to before we'd done that educational piece of like, practically this is how it might impact your work, this is the sort of training that you can do. That is what we found is quite a lot of where a lot of the fear comes from, because people hear this term, they don't practically know how it will impact them, and that's where a lot of the nervousness comes from it. And I think so much of the work that we've been doing with Google and community is around how do you bring this down to be something really practical and tangible, so that people can see, okay, well I've done this short training course, I've watched this video, and just pulling out that educational piece has such a massive impact in removing that level of fear and concern. And I thought it was interesting, your point around with Gen AI, saying you speak to it and bringing it down to a level of where people can actually feel that this is something they can engage with and can see how it can augment their job and help their work, rather than being this scary thing, and going back to what Kate said before, that is done to them and is actually something that can improve the way they work and increase their productivity in their different roles.
Yeah, I would totally support that point, and actually that's, I've only been at DWP a few months really, but that's definitely the lesson that I've taken, that we've got to allow our work coach teams to find the way for technology, generative AI maybe, but like just some of the technology that DWP currently uses are like really old. So like, you've just got to allow people to buy themselves more time to do the bit that only they can do human to human. Like, it's obvious, right? That you'd be amazed how much guff you hear about what AI is gonna do, when actually the main thing that we need to do is like help people just be more productive on their own terms. Anyway, I'm gonna tackle the local authorities. How do we? Because like I now sit in probably the most centralised command and control bit of government, and I am definitely like the wrong person for them really in a way, because I spent quite a long time early in my political career trying for this city to get power and control over our economy here in Merseyside, and so this is very important to me personally. And I think the answer is about accountability, because Liz, Kendall and I have said, you know, we want to have an ambition to get to 80% employment rate in the UK. There's only one G7 nation that's anywhere towards that, and that's Japan on 79%. So it is a big ambition to get close to it. Some places in the UK are already there. They already have an employment rate north of 80%, and other places are way behind. So I think we need more transparency over what is actually going on in our labour market, and then provide places with the tools in the box to tackle it. We want every place to have a growth plan, and I want DWP to be a part of local growth plans. And that means I'm not going to like go into the econometrics of this, because you and I, Deborah, could have a long conversation about this, and no doubt in our future we will.
Not on econometrics,
but like at the moment, like the measurement of like just the measurement of employment and the measurement of like what's going on in the labour market, it's having a bit of a moment at the moment. It's not great, and we need to use our operational data much more extensively, and that does mean sharing it. Yeah. So I'll just sort of concede the point, really. But the objective is to have transparency over what's going on for people, and then have accountability for that place to say that they can change it. And I will try as much as I can to put the tools in people's box so that they can deliver on that, working with partners. But yeah, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be countercultural, but fingers crossed.
Need any help?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have 5 apprentices who work for me, and I messaged them and asked if they had any questions. Do you mind if they're very short, they're super short.
I want to just make sure that other people have a chance to ask questions as well. Yeah, 1 and then 2, 3. Yeah.
Thank you, Theo. Paul and I'm from Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. Really good to hear the discussion this morning. We know that AI skills can contribute to, in our communities, they can really contribute to the government ambitions for growth. What role do you think that combined authorities should have in delivering AI skills, employment support and a just transition?
I think there's also the sort of wider philosophical question of like how you relate to a good life and work and productivity when we have these developments. Work for an organisation that represents about 800 based on tech. Some of them are really forward thinking and that this is great, increasing productivity. I'll be able to give my employees flexibility, maybe go to a 4-day working week, that I know they want and I'm happy for them to have. And then others are kind of like, great, I'll get an extra day's work out of all my employees. And I just worry there's the potential that we move towards the latter and probably more progressive and right thing for all of us in society. This is the sort of former. So how do you perceive that kind of narrative, that debate going in public, and how do we sort of shape it more effectively?
Great.
Hi, Connor Simpson from the Access Project. We work with disadvantaged young people on access to education. A big part of our work is around developing essential skills for young people that can support social mobility and build that and try to break down barriers to opportunity. As we're thinking about digital skills, much more as an essential skill for our future workforce, I wanted your views on what we should be seeing in schools in order to make sure that we're building that future economy and future workforce in a fair way that means that we can close a disadvantage gap at the same time that we build that we close the skills gap.
Yeah, great set of questions. So, combined authorities, how do we make sure they're involved? And then I think there's a question about how do you make sure that the changes of this work are to the benefit of us all. You have good work, not just sort of more productive. I think that comes back to your thing about applying values to the change. And then I think this really important question about
they make sure that we all benefit from it, not just the corporations. If that makes sense.
I think on your point as well, I think like Ali said, your question completely encapsulates it, but it just came out really interestingly in our survey as well, because when we were talking about the impact of AI and automation, like we said before, it wasn't so much this sector is affected, or in some instances, this role is affected. It was actually more like these tasks are affected. And I think that if we can get to a point where we're using AI to automate the types of tasks that really make people not really want to do their jobs, the boring tasks, the ones that are taking up too much time and effort and wearing people down in their roles, and allowing them to be freed up to focus more on the parts of their jobs that they're really passionate about, and gives them that real desire to work and to the positive impacts it has on their lives. I think that is the route that we should be going down, and I think that all of the training that we're doing at the moment with Google and community, that is really where it's focused on. And I think that if you are able to view it in that nuance of tasks rather than sectors that are affected, I think that's a really interesting route of looking at how we can drive those improvements that really make workers' lives better at the end of the day.
That's spot on.
I think research is really important, and it's government helping highlight the businesses that are doing well, because it's quite persuasive when it's businesses showing that they're doing well rather than government diktat.
Feel free to email examples.
Good examples.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one last question. Yeah, right at the back.
Thank you. It's Matthew from the Open Data Institute. It's primarily for Alison, really, but we've seen with things like GP data, where data's been used for consent, people have opted out of systems when they're able to do so. DWP obviously has a huge amount of data and access to data, including, and I think, the bank account data that's been looked at again today. It's really important, isn't it, to bring people along with that, and you can commit to doing consultation and wider civil society outreach before you introduce measures where you're getting bank account access data before you do that.
Okay, and we have one question in front here.
Yeah, discussing Michaela from Council from Cardiff. One of the things, I listened to all the debates and we talk about partnership, we were talking about this. One of the things I think we need to concentrate on, and I'd like to know your view, is education, higher education, secondary education, further education, mainly because in those institutions we currently train people to do jobs which are not there at the moment. So it's about a different mindset, and also, is there going to be flexibility in your new way of thinking for those institutions to respond? Because at the moment, FE institutions are constrained by numbers and matrices and various things. But if we're in the business of training people for jobs that are not there at the moment, there has to be some flexibility within the system in order for that to happen. Like we've got now, we're talking about Gen AI. I am not so sure that has permeated sufficiently across the curriculum in those institutions to give that responsiveness to the skills that we have.
Great, so I think there's a specific question about how do we take people with us on some of the changes we want to make around data, and we obviously need to make some of those changes in order to make the progress we want when it comes to public sector. And then I think there's questions about FE. Ali, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just respond really quickly. Totally take the point, and it's my colleague Andrew Weston who leads on that area, and the interaction will happen in the normal way. But you're right, to put the protections in place will help bring people with us. So I take the point. On higher educational flexibility, this is a really important challenge, and we're not starting from a good place. I think we have to all be honest about that. We've got really big issues with the transformative technology of people learning things like welding. Do you know what I mean? Like some of the most basic technologies that we need for the future of this country, we're finding it difficult to get learning in that space, right? So what the future we're talking about is like a way and beyond. So recognising that we're not coming from a good place, again, I would go back to the point that I made to Emma, which is like, the thing that we want to have is like transparency and accountability over where we are in the labour market, and then hopefully with the creation of Skills England, we can get much better at supporting colleges and improving what they're able to do so that they understand much better the needs of employers. And, because I think many of them do understand it now, they just don't have the...
We don't have that flexibility.
Yeah, they don't have the ability to design things. So we will need to get there iteratively, I think. But recognising we're not coming from a good place, I still think we should be ambitious to have that kind of approach where you always need an anchor institution, right, in a place, and colleges in so many of our places, particularly those where they're not dominated by universities, can be a major source of inclusivity. So yeah, flexibility, very important. If we can match that with accountability and then try and help colleges to overcome the big hump that we've got ahead of us, then open up a bit of a future on what college leaders think we should be looking at for the jobs of the future.
We're at time, so I want to say thank you to you all for your great questions and for coming today. I've found this to be a really interesting and positive discussion, actually. Clearly, we've got big challenges, and in some places, those are really impacting people who are losing their jobs or have lost their jobs. AI could seem to them like a threat, but clearly there is opportunity. And what I thought was interesting today was we weren't just talking about it in a theoretical way or just slagging off the Tories, which I know we like to do at this conference, but actually sort of talking about some of the practical ways that we can start to tackle that. And I think this example is interesting and sounds very positive, and it seems like there is a way forward there with the backing of the government and the determination to focus on this. So very interesting, very positive discussion. Thank you all for taking part. Thank you to our panelists as well for such an interesting discussion. I've got one last advert for you, which is for our weekly email Wonk Week, which if you don't get Wonk Week, we read all of the think tank reports so you don't have to. So you get in your weekly inbox a summary of what is happening in the think tank world. And you don't have to read it all, but you can just scan through and go, oh, that's quite interesting. So if you we have thousands of subscribers and they all love it, but it's just a hidden gem. So subscribe to 1 Week. You can find it on our website or on our social media. Thank you to the SMF team for putting it together.
We do adverts.
You can, if you've got
join a union. I should have said join community.